Good evening. It's Monday, November 20th, 2023. Welcome to episode 39 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Joining me tonight is Rebecca. How are you doing?
Hello.
How are you doing, Rebecca?
I'm doing great. And you?
Awesome. Yeah, going to jump on tonight and talk about a few things with you guys. And this week has been super hectic for us. It's Thanksgiving week, and I imagine everybody else is working toward getting themselves prepared for Thanksgiving, no matter what that may bring for you, whether or not you're hosting or going somewhere else. But Thanksgiving for me is one of those holidays that I really, really enjoy because of the fact that we can meet with family and friends with no expectation of any kind of a gift exchange or anything like that. So it's something that we've done on our property for, I believe now 22 years. I think we started doing it in 2001 when we first got to this property. And yeah, it's been great. What we do is get members of both of our families together, and we invite folks from Rebecca's side, my side, and we have a big gathering here. I think the biggest year we had, 34?
There were 35 people.
35.
And that included some of the neighbors actually came as well.
Yeah. So we typically get a fairly decent sized crowd. So we're going to be frantically running around here trying to get a bunch of things done. And then I've got some things happening this weekend as well. So it's been a pretty busy week for us. Tonight, this topic is going to be, will there ever be another Greatest Generation? And I'll talk a little bit more about why we came to that topic and what spurred that thought in our head. And we think it's kind of maybe something that'd be interesting to talk about. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's see who we've got in the chat. I got Adrian Garcia. How are you doing this evening? Welcome. Appreciate it. One thing that I also wanted to touch on is the fact that I wanted this content to be elsewhere. I wanted it to be captured and preserved in another library. So I made it a commitment to put this live stream content over onto the platform, just a podcast platform. So those people that would want to listen to it in the audio format would have the ability to do that. And I have been a little delinquent in that. So like the last 6 episodes of our lives have not been getting uploaded to the podcast platform, but I am currently, everything's been uploaded and it's there for preservation and anybody else who would like to listen to it there. Currently, it is on Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, and Google. And my intention is to develop as many of the different podcatcher platforms that exist out there so that people will be able to go on and listen to it. It honestly hasn't been something that I've put a lot of effort into. It is something that I want to improve upon moving forward. But the live streams are something that I actually enjoy doing at this point. But it is something that I haven't put a tremendous amount of effort toward. But I'm going to try to keep bringing you guys content and having, an open dialogue so that we'll be able to keep you guys kind of apprised of what we're doing here, and then just kick around some ideas on the homesteading and preparedness front. Also, to our entire YouTube library is over on, it auto-populates to Rumble and Odyssey. And I really think that that's an important thing to do, because I don't really like to put all my eggs in one basket. And I feel as though, even though YouTube is a good platform and it's one that I've enjoyed creating content for, I don't feel comfortable going as a person who's putting out content that I would like to have preserved in some format, to just be, again, putting that all in one place. So if you guys want to look at our stuff over on those platforms, it does exist there as well, Rumble and Odyssey. And I have to be honest that I don't really spend time over there. I don't go over there to check messages or see who's interacting with us over there. But it does exist. And if in fact you guys would like to check it out, feel free. Let me see where I'm at here. Cool. Yeah. Another thing that I want to do is kind of develop maybe a better format for the live streams that we're doing here. I want to be able to have a Q&A type of an interaction with folks, because I have received a lot of questions on some of the videos that we've made. And some of them are pretty recurrent. We get a lot of, the same type of questions, and I answer them all on the platform in a written format. But I think it's also useful to, maybe address some of those concerns that people have that are recurrent, because the reality is that maybe 5% of people are even going to comment on your stuff. And if those 5% of people keep having that same question, I'm assuming that there's probably other people that might benefit from it as well. So I just want to start answering maybe a few questions from folks that have interacted with the channel. And so, I was going to address that tonight. We've got a couple of questions that have come in the last few weeks. And one of them was one that I get quite a bit, honestly. I just did a video 2 weeks ago. I uploaded a video showing how it is that we source free food and what we do with the free food, bringing it into the chickens and allowing them to kind of do their thing with it. And then we turn it into compost. And I've received, just a tremendous amount of inquiry on that specifically. But again, since I just released that most recent video, I got a question from someone who goes by Krish 541. And it says, how do you deal with the pests the food attracts, or do you not even bother to worry about them? My small backyard operation attracts mice, flies, and possums for now. So I'm in between keeping the run open or doing fully enclosed. I'm in a residential neighborhood, so I worry about becoming a nuisance to my neighbors. A couple of things there. That's been something that a lot of people have asked questions about. And it's something that, we deal with here, but it's not as much of an issue as you may think. We do get nighttime nocturnal predators that are out there that may be attracted to the things that we have in the chicken yard. We have excess food in there of all sorts. And my take on it is that if that stuff exists for them there, they're going to be less likely to want to try to work hard to get into one of my coops to eat chickens. So it hasn't been a problem for us. And I actually feel really good about having it set up that way because we have such good infrastructure on our coops. And I think that's the second part to this that needs to be thought about, is if you have great infrastructure for your chickens, that's going to solve all your problems. Because a lot of people wind up putting up a coop and it's not as secure as maybe they think it is. And for whatever reason, they'll come underneath or go through a door or go through something else. And then they'll wind up losing their entire flock or, come out to a pretty decimated, coop. So I think that's one issue, is making sure you have solid infrastructure, because I really do think that it's our responsibility, if we're going to have livestock, especially like chickens, because they're completely vulnerable when they're up in the coop at night. It's really important to make sure you have solid infrastructure. And then with what is attracted in the evening hours, I'm not that concerned with it. I will say, if you are concerned with it, and maybe you do, as this person does, live in a residential neighborhood, as they've expressed, there's things that you can do as well. I mean, you don't need to have an operation that brings in as much produce as we do. You can do this on a much smaller scale and have it fully contained, quite honestly. I've done a video showing kind of something like that, and I have put a link in the description of this live stream, showing that particular video that I did, where I was basically just using a tote. So it was, a tote with a lid on it, and you can put your food scraps, you can put all of the compostables in that, and then you can allow the chickens to work that throughout the daylight hours, and then you just cover it up at night, and then it's completely secure as far as from something getting in there. The smell isn't going to be present as much, and then they're going to not be able to get in there, the raccoons and possums and skunks and whatever else. So that's one way that you can go about kind of mitigating that. Is that you just really need to kind of think outside of the box, look at your specific situation, and be flexible to, other ideas that exist out there. Because what you see me do, what I would hope that you would do is take what you like from it and build your own thing. Don't try to replicate or emulate what we're doing, because we're still massaging everything. Every time we bring material in, the ratios are different. And so our compost is different, and all of our concerns are different. The yard that we run, it's constantly in a state of adjustment, and we're adjusting to what the birds are doing, and we're adjusting to the material that's being brought in and coming out. So just be aware of that. Absolutely be aware that, it's something that you as a small in a neighborhood, it doesn't exclude you from doing this. If you've got 3 chickens or 4 chickens or 5, whatever, it doesn't exclude you from composting, because you don't need to have, in reality, you don't need to have a tremendous amount of compost to have a significant impact, because that compost can be taken and you can make compost tea with it, and you can multiply the microbial population by the thousands or millions and have a tremendous effect on what you're trying to grow and your soil quality. So you just have to think outside of the box with this. And what I would tell you as well is you also just need to try to go out and put yourself in a position to make some mistakes, because you're not going to get it right the first time. It's just not going to happen. You're going to make mistakes, and you may have success, but the next time might be different. So just go out there and try to do the things that you think you want to do, and, try to learn as much as you can. But,
well, and I think you already covered it, but our coops have bottoms on them, and it works twofold so that critters can't come up and in, but the chickens, when they dust bathe, can't get out and go under and out either. So
that's huge. What I have is one coop has expanded metal, one coop has why am I drawing a blank on it? Hardware cloth at the bottom of the coop. So nothing's coming in that way. And as Rebecca pointed out, what they will wind up doing is they'll wind up scratching. As they do, they'll either dust bathe, or they're looking for, food or bugs or what have you. And that will compromise the seal, ground contact from your coop or whatever. And then it's going to make it easier for a predator to get in. So all of our coops have metal on the bottom of them, and nothing's coming in that way. And the chickens aren't going to start digging and dust bathing and doing that whole thing. So that's probably the largest area that people wind up losing chickens, is they build a coop and then they don't secure the bottom, and then they wind up coming in underneath, or a door gets left open because somebody, the door wasn't either great to begin with, or they leave it open. They come in that way. Rarely do they come through the chicken wire or whatever, although that can happen. They're going to take.
Raccoons are crafty too, so you need to have a good latch on the door.
Yeah. All of those things. So if you're going to, raise chickens or whatever, and you don't want to lose them, certainly you got to think like a crafty raccoon, because a raccoon actually will reach through and grab a chicken and pull it through. They'll pull the thing right through like a 2x4 inch opening. And just infrastructure is super important. So also flies, those vary from year to year. We didn't really have a bad fly year this year, although we kept bringing in the same amount of inputs that we normally do. A lot of pig manure, a lot of cow manure, a lot of produce, a lot of everything that makes flies. And we just didn't have a bad fly larvae year. But the year prior we had a pretty significant fly load. And that's just one of those things that everybody deals with. If you have a farm, you have a homestead, you're going to deal with flies. What else did I miss on that particular one? I think I covered that. And then I had another person that asked, because people have similarly asked this type of a question. It's from a person called Sim and Kiwi. It says, does feeding that amount of produce to your chickens have a negative impact on the number of eggs you get? How do you balance their protein requirement? How we balance their protein requirement is the fact that they get to free range. That's how we run it. Now, if they were in a spot where they didn't have that ability, doing what we do with the food reduction and bringing in produce might pose a problem. But we allow our chickens to have free access to their food. Like right now, right before they got put up, they had the food introduced to them again, and they could fill up their crops, get up on the roost and sleep, process food while they're sleeping. And then they get to wake up in the morning and go down and get as much as they want. And then we'll go in and pull their food. And then they're strictly left to go out into the chicken yard and forage for food, whether that be bugs or, other types of invertebrates, plus the produce and food scraps that we bring into the yard. They'll benefit greatly from that. And what I've found is that our egg production is high. We have chickens that lay all the way through like the winter most of the time. We've got some of our older hens, which I'm probably going to need to cull. Right now, they're slowing down. But we have our first year birds that are they're going into their second year now, but they're going to lay all winter. So, I think it's dramatically just having birds out and having them be active, I think, has really been helpful. So our birds get about an eighth of a pound per bird per day. So they're getting about half of what they would get normally. And we feed a 16% protein mash to them. So I'm going to switch into a question I had. And this is a question that I get. I had so many people asking this. And it's a biochar question. This comes from 2 weeks ago. I got this question again from Hilltop Blues. And it says, how do you find your 30-gallon barrels with removable lids? I've asked 6 different farmers. No farmer has one with removable lids. One farmer had a barrel with no lid. He wanted $25 for it. This probably isn't going to be the answer that people want to hear, but the barrel that I got was given to me from a friend, and he has access to these barrels. He had a lot of them, and he was kind enough to give one to me. It was actually a brand new barrel. These barrels are used for hazardous material removal, and they're bought from a company called Granger. And I put a link in the description of this broadcast. So if anybody's interested in sourcing one of those barrels, you can click on that link and see what the barrels are, where they consist, and how much they cost. You're not going to like it. They're about $250. The good news is you don't need that barrel to make biochar. There's many different ways that you can go about it. And you don't even need to make biochar in a portable vessel like I have, an enclosed type of a vessel. Mine's a retort, but you can make other types of portable vessels that you can make char in. But you can make it in the ground if you have access to that. You can do a trench method or make like a cone, the cone pit method. So you don't need to go out and spend a bunch of money on it. The whole idea of doing this carbon capture, this carbon sequestration, is to try to utilize waste streams. We're not going out and purchasing wood to make biochar. This is all from waste products. And my thought on the whole thing was that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to source material from the cheapest that I possibly can. And that retort that I built, which is getting ready to go on its 3rd season, I didn't spend a dime on it. All of that was stuff I scavenged. So that's kind of the way you want to go if you're going to be doing this sort of thing. So I would say don't go spend money on it. If you can find some things cheaply, absolutely use that as your avenue, but try to think frugally when doing this. I wouldn't spend a dime on really any of this stuff unless you just really have your heart set on a specific type of, chamber or vessel or something like that. But yeah, I've received so many questions on that because people see the system that I have and they're like, oh, where do you get that inner barrel? Because 55-gallon drums are super easy to come by, and you can find, chimney flues and things like that. But yeah, that's probably not the answer people wanted to hear. What is up, elusive 323? Hello from the deep south of New Zealand.
Wow.
Yeah, welcome tonight, man. Appreciate that. So I hope that answers some questions for people who might be interested in learning about or where you can find that sort of thing. But again, mine was given to me. And I had one other question I was going to address from a question that I got, and I thought it was kind of a good question because what it shows me is people are thinking outside of the box, and that's really what you need to do when you're doing any of this. And basically, this is from somebody who goes by Mud Wheelies 1, and he says there are 31-gallon trash cans at Walmart. Would that work for the inner chamber he's referring to? And I'm going to give him the quick answer of no, because the temperatures that are present in a retort chamber like mine are, 1200 degrees and above. It gets extremely hot, and something that thin walled would never withstand those type of temperatures. You need, even the barrel that I have, there is deformation in the barrel. There's not deformation in the part where the lid seats. That hasn't warped, but the lid itself has warped, and the barrel itself has wrinkles in it. But it's thick-walled steel as opposed to that thin gauge tin or whatever those things are made out of. So it would never work in that sense. It just wouldn't hold up to even one thing, because you need to have exclusion of oxygen in that inner chamber. And as soon as that thing warped and the lid wound up not seating properly, it just wouldn't work. But again, I hats off to that guy, man, for coming up with something that's kind of out of the box. And I appreciate those type of questions. I try to address them, like I say, to the best of my ability on the channel in a written format, but that just, you're very limited. I can't explain it nearly as well as I could in this format. And so if you guys in the future have any questions, certainly kick them my way. If you have any questions about anything right now, kick them.
Just see what Adrian said. If the door got left open.
Oh, man.
Her dog killed her flock.
Oh, wow. That sucks, man. That just happened to me. My door was left open and my dog killed most of the flock. Yeah, that's heart-wrenching, man. It's actually one of the reasons why I run multiple coops. And that's something you guys might want to consider just as an option if you have the ability to do it. I'm not saying that everybody has the space nor the money nor the whatever to do that, but it's just a consideration that if you don't put all your eggs in one basket, just like I was talking about with our content earlier, you're less likely to be completely severely impacted, because they're not going to probably get both coops in one night. I run 3 coops. So I'm going to still have chickens somehow. They're going to get into one coop if they get in at all, and then they're going to do what they do, and they're probably going to, not wipe us out. So that's something that you should consider maybe. I also have a link in this broadcast of a video that I did speaking specifically on coop security. 6 things that are going to make you more secure, your chickens more secure and less likely for predation. So if that's something you want to look at, feel free to do so. Right on. I'm waiting on my third batch of biochar to cool down. Done 2 yesterday. Yeah, man, sounds like you're working. I have not yet started because we're kind of in that transition period going from summer to winter. We're still a little bit brown around here. We have a little bit of rain, and I think they've lifted burn restrictions. I'm probably going to be torching a pile off this week anyhow, regardless, because for the years that we've lived here at Thanksgiving, I've torched off a big old burn pile every year. And
it's kind of been a tradition.
Yeah, it's totally a tradition. The only years that we haven't done it are the years when we haven't had any rain by Thanksgiving, and it's just still like fire season around here. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the char season. It's on the way. It's coming. You are welcome, Adrian. So tonight's main topic, thought we would talk about tonight's main topic, which is really more of a rhetorical question about, will there ever be another greatest generation? And I think it's, from my perspective, just in the short answer to that, I would say at this point, it doesn't look very likely. But the thing that caused us to even think about making this something we would talk about tonight was, about 2 weeks ago, we went to a funeral for a friend of the family. And this lady, she lived till she was 102 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, she was 102 when she died. And while we were at her funeral, at the eulogy that was given, the person was speaking about her, and they said that she was from the builder's generation. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like, I was standing back from where Rebecca was at. And when he said that, I kind of thought, I never heard of that before. And unbeknownst to me, Rebecca had that same thought because she came home. And what did you do?
Oh, I started looking it up and kind of researching. I can't talk. The generations of and the years that they cover, and events that kind of happened or how they got their names.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I've heard of the greatest generation. I've heard of baby boomers. I've heard of my generation, which is Gen X. But there's other generations in there that I hadn't even really known existed. And from what we were able to ascertain, what we gained from kind of doing a little bit of research on it was that the American generations, they came, the first one was...
Or the first one that we found.
Yes.
Not to say that it was the first one, because we don't know that.
Right. The first one that we could find that they had named was called the Lost Generation. And there really wasn't much about that that we were able to find information about. But what I'll do is I'll just go through the generations that exist currently. And then we'll go back and we'll talk a little bit about them.
Well, maybe you should touch before you do that, the Lost Generation. The last person of that generation died in 2018 of 117 years old.
Yeah. So there's nobody left from that particular generation. So the next one would be the greatest generation, which is also the builder's generation.
Yes.
And we didn't know that at the time, but in looking it up, that's what we learned. Then there was the silent generation, the baby boomers, the Gen X, the millennials, Gen Z, and then the current generation that exists is Generation Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess going back to the one after the Lost Generation. Lost Generation was also called the 1914 generation, and we believe that was because they were the ones that fought in World War I, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So they were born in 1883 and lived they were born in the period of 1883 to 1900. And so to just put that in a little bit of context, obviously those people were born before the birth of the car. before, obviously,
TV.
before that, long before that. It was just a period of more self-reliance. Obviously, these people had to be less connected to all of the things that exist now, right? They were a generation that were probably doers. They probably, all the things that I think people in this community, people that are looking to be self-reliant, they lived those skills out of basically necessity. That's the way their life was. So the next generation encompasses the greatest generation, or builders, and they were born during the period of 1901 to 1927. And so I guess we were trying to find out why exactly was it that they were called the greatest generation and what was so great about them. And one of the things is that they lived through the period where they had to endure the Great Depression, and they comprised the bulk of the enlisted forces in World War II.
Yes.
And whether or not you agree with the war or the war effort or whatnot, I think there was a lot of people at that time in this country that had a more unified view of conflict. And there was a lot more rallying cry to get behind the American effort.
Yeah, they pulled together to help one another out. If it was folks in the service or their neighbors, to they were inspired to grow victory gardens to help out with their rations and help feed their families and the families around them.
Sorry about this. I'm doing a little wardrobe change here.
Taking his clothes off.
Yeah, I'm doing a little wardrobe change. Sorry about that, guys.
Hello, Ingrid's Kitchen.
Hey, Ingrid's Kitchen. What's up? Hello from Oregon. You just gave us a sub. I appreciate it. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Hope you get what you came for. That's an interesting thing, I think, and something I want to point out. They were encouraged to grow victory gardens. And that was something that was encouraged by the federal government. And that was done so that took a lot less pressure off of the food system so that the war effort could be supported. And it's kind of interesting if you think about it, because right now, why would that not be something that they would encourage now? Why do you think that is?
Because they want you more dependent on
them.
On them.
Yeah. I think it's just
them being the government and
right. I don't know. I just think we have so much reason right now to grow our own victory gardens and to do more for ourselves. And that's such a great positive message that our government actually at the time was in favor of. But there's no mention of that in today's society. And so I just think that's a really important point to take away from all of this as we transition through the generations. All citizens basically pulled together in that war effort, both men and women. Women were working in factories and men were out fighting the war. And it seemed like there was such a celebration of jubilation when the war was finally won. This country was like probably unified and just at a point where I don't know if we'll ever see that really that much again.
Right. Back with the victory gardens, part of that was to help boost morale, and it gave people a feeling of purpose because they were contributing.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't live obviously through that period of time. None of us, neither you or I did. We can just look back at the history and
my parents did.
Right. Her parents were born, and that was part of their history, being part of the greatest generation. My parents were actually born in the following generation, which spans from 1928 to 1945. And that was called the silent generation, which I haven't heard much about. There's not much mention of the silent generation, at least as far as from my perspective. And they were also called traditionalists. And I think one thing that's important to point out is that a lot of these generations that you look up and you try to get information on, they've had multiple names. Certain names are thrown out there, and it's usually the one that sticks that they go with. So how did they get the traditionalists? Does that come after or before? Do you know?
The traditionalists were before, I believe. And it just didn't hang. Silent generation is what stuck. So
right. And so from what we gather, the silent generation got their name because the Great Depression and World War II caused this generation to have fewer children, making their generation comparatively small. So they were also known as those that basically just kept their heads down and kept working hard and, didn't have a lot to say back. I mean, they just were kind of moving in one direction. They just basically kind of took orders at that point, I think, from society, government. Basically, government was saying, hey, this is what we need to do. And they just were driven in doing that. And so they kind of were just known as the silent generation. The next generation, which is the baby boomers, and that's the generation that you're in, 1946 to 64.
Yes.
That's one I think people have heard a lot about. And those folks were born in the period where it was the end of World War II and the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Basically caused a birth explosion from this generation, earning them the name baby boomers.
There was more prosperity.
Yeah.
More going out and being able to spend. And
yeah, the war just ended. The United States was this great economic superpower. It was an emerging superpower. It had basically kind of taken control of things, and there was just this explosion of industry, and it caused so much prosperity and consumption and all of those sort of things. And there was more of an optimism, I think, when the war was ended. And so there was just a tremendous amount of sexual activity causing a population boom. So they earned the name baby boomers.
And there's really no other name that they were given. They just were called the baby boomers or boomers.
Yeah, that's an important thing too. I mean, not really important, but just something to note from this is that was the only generation of all of these that didn't earn some kind of a secondary name. They were always known as the baby boomers. Let me check out what Tim has to say right here. Tim Riley says, my grandma's most impactful Great Depression story was that when it was her father's birthday, they pooled their money, splurged, and bought him Swiss cheese.
Aww.
As they couldn't afford it but once a year. Holy smokes, man. Holy smokes.
It's kind of heartwarming.
Yeah, that's almost like heart-wrenching.
I know, but it's warming that they were able to do that and the love that they felt.
Right. Gosh, man. I mean, I'm fortunate to live in the generation that I was living in. She was fortunate to be in the generation she's in. And I think to some extent, we're all fortunate. We can always find fortune in what we've been given and what we make for ourselves. But man, I don't think people of this generation that's being born, they can't even fathom that. And I guess as we kind of transition through these generations, you'll maybe pick a little bit of that up. But yeah, man, thanks for sharing that. That's quite something. It just speaks to how, the littlest things can make all the difference. And when you don't have a lot, just, the littlest things are what's special. So, Wow. Yeah. Yeah, the baby boomers were like really lived through some tumultuous times. They were born right about a transition, during Vietnam. There was the Vietnam War that, took place during that era, and they started to, and essentially the baby children and the hippies.
Mm-hmm.
And
Rock
so,
and roll music.
yeah, all of that sort of stuff. And so if you kind of think about that and compare where we're transitioning to in society and how, I don't know, just the expectation of what's acceptable in society.
So I'm the youngest of 6, and one of my older brothers was in Vietnam. And I remember as a small children, he got wounded. So he wasn't in Vietnam for very long when part of his leg was blown off. He still has the full entire leg. It's just from the calf to the ankle on one side. But I remember as a small children baking cookies and taking these large cardboard boxes to the hospitals and visiting the vets and distributing and getting kicked out because I was too young to be in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me answer this right here. It says, I think after the war, they were encouraged to have children with incentives. Huh. Yeah. I don't know that to be true. I don't know that not to be true. It wouldn't surprise me. That could very well be one of the reasons why as well. But yeah, they're not really doing that these days. Maybe they should, given the fact of kind of where we're headed with the next generations not being quite as productive. Yeah, so the next generation is Generation X, and Gen X was known as the latchkey generation. And so they were born from 1965 to 1980. If that's where you fall, then you're a Gen Xer, and you were also known as a
latchkey generation.
Latchkey kid. Yeah, latchkey kid. One of the things that I think's really significant about transitioning from the 60s to this generation, obviously we had the civil rights movement, which was a very tumultuous time, and the war in Vietnam was very not supported in nearly the same way as the previous war was. That was of great significance. And you started to see a lot of people pushing back against that and kind of going counterculture. And so you wound up going from the silent generation who was just keep your head down, do what you're told, and move forward. And now we're starting to get a little bit more rebellious. Maybe that's a good thing in some sense, but I also think that a lot of the rebellion came from a lack of, continued morality or respect. And you also started to see in Generation X, one of the big movements that came out during that period of time. I think it's one of the bigger movements, was the whole women's liberation thing. And there was a big push to say that, women and men are equal and women need this and all of those sort of things, with a kind of almost disregard to the fact that we are two distinctly different sexes with different innate capabilities and desires and all of those sort of things. There was this push at that point in time to sort of erase that in a lot of sense, and that women, you didn't need to be in the home. You didn't need to, and there was this push to get women into the workforce. Maybe that was because they realized the value of having two incomes to tax. I don't know. I don't know if that had something to do with it, or if it was kind of to muddy the waters between the sexes. I honestly don't know, but I do think that it had a pretty profound impact on things moving forward. And that's one of the reasons why that my generation was called the latchkey generation, because we came home to empty homes. We had a key hidden somewhere outside of the door, and we came home to an empty house because both parents were working. That was my situation. I would walk home every day, walk a mile home from school. Loved it. It was awesome. Got home. My parents weren't there.
You're a troublemaker.
I had to let myself in. I had no problems with it. It didn't bother me. That was my life. I loved my life. I loved my upbringing. I had the cows. That was my company. But that was my situation. So I was a latchkey kid, and a lot of that's from the women's liberation, and it's also the promotion of the idea that this 2-income household was necessary. And that, I think, also came as a result of our consumerism. The more stuff we wanted to buy, more stuff we thought we needed to have, we had to go out and buy it, right? We had to get a job. We had to do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, there were different toys. I have to say, I had a Barbie doll house, but it was made out of a cardboard box. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. We didn't need the fancy stuff when we were young, but it's kind of transitioned into a different mindset. There was also another thing of significance during that period of time was Roe v. Wade. And I think that's had a big impact on the other generations moving forward with regard to that whole thing. There's been a significant amount of people having children. They're having fewer children than their predecessors. And that's been the story of the following or the next generation, which is millennials. They were also known as Gen Y. I guess that's because of coming after X, I'm assuming. Yes.
That was what I could research, was that it kept with the alphabet. However, the Gen Y didn't stick. And because it was the turn of the century, millennials did stick.
Yeah. So, millennials pretty much grew up at a period of relative stability and economic prosperity. If you think about it, life was pretty good, between 1981 and 96. Yeah, we had recessions and things like that and different conflicts of different sorts, but America was doing pretty well. We had a lot of prosperity and a lot of stability. No major wars. Obviously, America has its interest in, dropping bombs on foreign places all the time. But it was a period of relative stability. Significantly as well, I think that people grew up during the creation of the internet. I can recall a time for the majority of my life where the internet didn't exist. Same with Rebecca. We, a majority of our lives were without the internet. And the introduction of the internet has had a dramatic impact on the generations moving forward, how we interact with each other, all of those sorts of things. So the millennials were also the generation where everybody got a trophy. Remember that?
Everybody's a winner.
Yeah. They started, even if your baseball team lost, you're still going to get a little trophy because we don't want anybody's feelings hurt. And that's just, I don't know, it just never happened at one point. So what we're doing is we're creating a generation that has expectations of getting something for nothing. And I don't know how that serves that generation well, quite honestly. Hey man, what's up, Braden? How you doing, bud? Yeah, he's in the house. Yeah, love it. What did I just do here? I don't know what I just did here. Hold on a second, guys. Screwing things up there. I'm back. Yeah, we're rolling with the grandkids. It's awesome. It's awesome. What do you have to say here? Adrian says, promotion of materialism, promotion of acquiring things make you successful and happy.
Or so you think.
For some people, I think they believe that. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Millennials also at this point are a generation that has, been promised like, hey, you go to college.
And then they're strapped with debt.
Yeah, you get all this education and you're somehow owed a job now that you get out. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people that do this are getting out and not really having that dream fulfilled, but yet they've got this mounting debt that they've accumulated. So I think all of the generations that we've already covered, things have been starting to decline in those generations, but it's just seemingly getting like worse and worse. One of the things that I think is a real thing with the millennials is like declining fertility rates. And I don't know if that's because of something in the water, something in the food. Is it because people are eating more soy? I don't know. Is it because they're waiting later to have children?
Carrying around electronic devices that may be damaging them?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know what the cause of it is, but I do know that that's happening. Because it's very interesting how either by choice or not, there's less children being born these days.
However, it is put out there to go out, enjoy life. You can always work later.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole kid thing is an interesting thing because years ago, there used to be fairly big families living in small homes. You shacked up with 2 and 3 in one bedroom with one bathroom, and you got hand-me-downs and you got all of this stuff. And now we've got this expectation that we've got to have these giant ass houses that
every kid has their own bedroom.
That's what we had.
Their own bathroom.
We're no better. I'm not throwing stones here. I live in a glass house. I'm not throwing stones. I'm just saying that's how we've transitioned in society, and we have nobody in society to point the finger at but ourselves, quite honestly.
However, for Eric and I, we have instilled the desire to work for our children, make something of yourself, become something so that you can take care of yourself.
Yeah. In every one of these generations, there's people who are doing exceptional, that are living according to being self-sufficient, being responsible, being great human beings. This isn't like a way to say that everybody in those things aren't doing certain great things, because there always is. But as a whole, there's been a lot of problems as we move forward in the generations. And that was the question I opened this conversation with. Will there ever be another greatest generation? And I think at this point, it's hard to imagine that it would be. It's going to take something cataclysmic in order for people to pull together, because people just naturally, when they've been given something that is easy, they're going to take the easiest route. And again, I go back to what I said, we have nobody to point the finger at but ourselves. If we make things so easy for our kids, or we make the expectations so high, I want my kid to have life better than me. I want him to have life easier than me. Well, that's great. But you have to also think about, what are you teaching them, and how's that going to translate through the generations? Mm-hmm. I think that's the question that I have, because it's clear to me. I think that every generation that looks at the generation that comes after them, they think they're just a little lamer than themselves, right? I'm sure that every generation went, oh man, those boomers, those guys they're out there. And we all do that. But I think it's pretty hard to look back and look at how we've declined, and look at the things that we've done in society. And we've taken the bait from the people that have put the bait out there. Oh, go buy this shit. Your kids need this so that they can be whatever. And we've taken that bait. You need the big 3,000 square foot home. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. But just think about what people lived in back then. And were they any less happy? Were they any less prosperous? Do they live their lives any worse than we are? When you look at the fact that now we've got Gen Z, who's known for locking themselves in their room, hanging out on the internet, sexting, psychiatric disorders. Basically, they have intellectual disability. They're having fewer children because they're not out there actually interacting with human beings. And I'm not saying everyone, I'm just saying that there's people that I know that have kids that are doing this.
Yes.
Nobody did this when I was in my generation that I'm aware of, because we didn't have the internet. You take
We
that.
have the filters to make us look absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. You take this internet away from people. You think they're still going to be in their rooms? No, they're going to get out and interact with human beings. And that's really what I think we've seen with the transition throughout these generations. So I don't know. It's more of a, some food for thought for those that are listening to this to think about and to have a conversation about, because it's stuff that I think is important to keep perspective on, you know?
I know one of the things that I point out to Eric is how surprising well, I don't know, surprising is, but when you're grocery shopping, how many toddlers are sitting in their shopping carts with tablets, watching a show or a movie, where before, people would actually be interacting with people. Kids would go out and play with kids. Now you see kids and they're together, but they're both looking at their phones. So there's a social disconnect.
Yeah, that's a parental issue. All of that shit is a parental issue. There's no reason that should be occurring, but the parents are allowing that. And every generation that grows up that way, they're going to think that's normal. Oh, we'll just put a tablet in their hand and it'll just keep them quiet. Well, I don't know. Why'd you have kids? If that's what you want to fucking do, is put, a tablet in their hand and not interact with them. So I don't know. It's just an interesting thing that kind of like gets under my skin, but let's see what do you got, Braid? What's up? Just down in LA, it was a shit show. Unbelievable lack of accountability, and everybody's in total dependence mode. They're literally cheating their children like little gods. Huh. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Again, I think that every generation looks at the following generation and just kind of shakes their head a little bit and goes, man, wow, what's happened? So really, where do we go from here? I think it's only going to be up to parents to wake up and realize that there's more to life than, succumbing to the things that we're told we need, and think outside of the box and think what's really important in, child rearing and raising the next generation, because we're the ones who are teaching that sort of thing. That's where they learn it from.
I was sharing with Eric that things that I remember when I was younger is babysitting the next door neighbor's kids. Kids would go around and mow neighbors' lawns. Of course, we don't have newspapers anymore, but there were paper boys, and it was kind of at a small age you were instilling that work ethic that has long since been lost. Yeah, it's a damn interesting thing to me, man. I don't know, and I don't have like a lot of optimism because of where we are right now, and that's kind of lame to feel that way, but I can't deny it. I just don't think that it's great, the fact that we have people now who want to hire people and pay them a good wage, but yet people don't want to work. That's not the way it was in the Great Depression.
Those people would have done anything to have a job, anything to go out and to work. They were standing in line hoping to get a job. So if we ever have another depression, if we ever have some kind of a collapse, how's that going to play out? Do you think people are going to be standing out there to get a job? We have signs up in town. Hey, starting wage, $21 an hour.
With incentives
To go up to like whatever as starting. Now that doesn't go very far anymore because of inflation and all of those sort of things. So it sounds good, but in reality, it's not that great. But nonetheless, people are looking to hire people, and people just don't want to work. And so that's where I think there's going to be some real issue, because generations everybody gets a trophy. I'm entitled to stuff. My mommy's going to, get it for me or whatever. And it's like, gosh darn it, man. It's going to take something. It is going to take something significant and cataclysmic for people to pull together, because that's the only way that people pull together ever. That are right now been splintered because of the way that they've caused people to be black versus white, or Christian versus Jew, or this group versus that group. It has to be something big in order for people to go, wow, I want to stand shoulder to shoulder with the person next to me, because that's what really matters. It's not all these other petty differences. But yeah, it's interesting. What's up, Midwest Preparedness? How are you? London Pickering, hello from Oklahoma. Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you being on the channel. Thanks for watching. Yes. Yeah, that's another important point. It says, it almost seems as technology progresses, humanity digresses. Gosh darn it, man. I tell you what.
The next, I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
I'll get to it. As much good stuff as there are about the internet, because like what we're doing right now, we're having communication over the internet, and the convenience that it provides, man, it's good for those reasons. But there's so much about it that is just not okay when you see people that are just not interacting as actual human beings should. And I don't know, there's a lot of evil associated with the internet. I honestly think we would be better off as a species without it, quite honestly. To go back to pen and paper and Rolodexes, I think we would be better off. But that won't probably come into view until something, again, cataclysmic happens electronically, because we're also now connected electronically. Whether it's going to be you get hacked, or whether it's, you've been cut out of things because if you don't comply with something or whatever. When that starts happening to people in mass, I think people will go, oh, this is kind of messed up. I wish we would have thought differently. But I think it's too late. We're so far into this thing, with AI coming and all that. I think it's just a matter of time before, people are really going to see some things happen. This is definitely a cool quote. Weak men create hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men.
And Eric said that very quote today.
Yes. Yeah. Wash, rinse, repeat, said the fall of Rome. Yeah, read that if you haven't read that, but that's an interesting quote that really resonates. But I think that's kind of where we've transitioned to. And it's, I don't know the answer other than to say, just recognize it and try to do better for the next generation, because we all have a hand in raising the next generation. However we do that, setting a good example, teaching, that's where they're going to learn. I think it's a travesty to send your kids off and have values instilled in them that don't support the values that you hold. So I think that's where it has to start.
I like his next comment.
For sure. And this is Midwest Preparedness Project saying this. It says, for sure, we've almost digressed back to using emojis like the ancient Egyptians. The cycle has almost come full circle. Man.
It's so true, because a lot of them don't know how to write a full sentence. They just know, the brief quoting, or not quoting, but brief little language that they use.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. I don't know. I feel like such a noob when it comes to history, because there's so much that was never taught that exists out there. They only taught you the stuff that like they wanted you to know. And so the deeper you dig into learning about certain things, it's very eye-opening, and it kind of puts things into a different perspective, a different reality, at least for me, because it's easy to just go through life and accept what people tell you. That's the easy way. But when you actually see things from a different perspective, or you learn something new that's historically significant, it really alters the way you think about things.
Not.
And the only way that that's going to get passed on is from you, the teacher. So I think we're all teachers to some extent, and sharing information is like very, very valuable. Let's see here. Were you here earlier? Are you just busting my chops right now? Let's see. It says, Porterhouse, where do you find your 30-gallon drums with removable lids? I already covered that, man, earlier in the broadcast. Links in the descriptions from my buddy Bravesig. He hooked me up, but he ain't gonna hook you up. They're expensive, $250, man. But I already covered all that in the thing. I don't know if you're just busting my chops or whatever, but let's see here. History is always taught from the perspective of the financiers of the world.
Mm-hmm. So you see it through their eyes.
Yeah.
Or their perspective.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting how just a percentage of the truth is told, or a recounting of a story is told, but they'll selectively leave out certain things. They'll cherry pick the part that they want to shape the argument with. And it's an interesting tactic that's used in propaganda. But that's where it falls upon you to not just believe everything. I'm a very skeptical person. I question everything. So she can attest to that. But I think it's important to just be, willing to think about things before, somebody just pops off about it, and do your own research. That's what I would encourage anybody to do. Don't take anything that we've said tonight as like the gospel. It's just some ideas.
And it's only kind of a little bit out of those time eras. There's so much more that.
Yeah, I think the overarching message is that, again, it was just a rhetorical thing to throw out there and ask the question, will we ever get back there? Or is it too late? And what's it going to take for us to get back there? That's kind of where I wanted to go with that. So hopefully that at least provoked that thought. And, let's see here. Oh, right on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hilltop, man. Go back and listen to it, man. I actually pulled up your question from Hilltop Blues, and I addressed that specific question. And so there is a link in the description of this broadcast for where you can go and get those. Like I said, I got that from a friend of mine, but I wouldn't suggest going out and spending that kind of money on something like this. And I covered that earlier in the broadcast, but trust but verify, 100%, man. I don't know if I would even trust. I would say verify first.
Yeah.
That
definitely is you.
It's just where I am, looking at y'all sideways. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get out of tonight's broadcast, guys. if there's anything else anybody wants to talk about, we'd be more than happy to sit here and chat with you for a little bit longer. But I know everybody's got a busy week coming up, as do we. We are running around here trying to get some things taken care of because, like I was saying earlier, I'm going to be doing something this weekend, going to require us to bug out a day or so early, so we don't have much time left here in order to take care of some biz. But
which is right after we have a big house full of people.
Yeah. Yep. So thanks.
But I was going to say it's very interesting going back and looking at that the different generations and what they were known for or what they went through, and it's just like a snowball, of just losing more and more and more as the years kind of go on. Did you talk about Alpha?
No, I didn't talk about Gen Alpha, but that's the current generation that we're in. They are actually from 2013 to current. And so, what's up, Jason? Good to see you, man. I like that greenhouse, brother. It's looking like pretty bougie. I like it. French doors and pretty sweet glass on it. So, wow. Gen Alpha, that's the story that's yet being written. They, for some reason, are called also the I generation, but Gen Alpha is, I think, probably what's going to stick with them. But I don't know. We'll kind of see how things go for them. I mean, that's a lot of kids are being born right now.
Yes, and these names come sometime in that time period. It's not like at the very beginning they're given this name. It's just names are thrown out, and whatever time period it is that a particular name sticks or a couple names stick, that's when they get their names. Yeah,
there's currently 7 generations that people are still alive, and there was 8, but again, Rebecca said that person died in 2018. So it was 117 years old.
117 years old and 200 and something days. So she was almost 118.
That's like a curse, man. I would never want to live that long,
Yes.
I mean, longevity is a great thing to have and all of those sort of things. But man, I mean, that person's outliving their grandchildren. Mm-hmm. They're going to see their grandchildren die. So I don't know, man. That reminds me of the Green Mile. And when that dude got that curse on him and he was just like, it was like a curse, and he had to just keep living. And he just knew that every person that he came into, all the people that he loved, he knew that they were going to pass, and he was going to have to stay there and watch that. It was like, oh man. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, good chat tonight, guys. I appreciate everybody that was in, and I think we're gonna bug out. So remember, again, you guys can check out the broadcast on the audio version of this, which is either going to be on Spotify, Audible, iHeart, or Google. And I intend on adding, Apple, although Apple kind of pisses me off with all the information they want for me to do that. But nonetheless, a lot of people use that platform, and I want to try to get this out there. So people that want to listen to it there can. Maybe you prefer to listen to it in the car or whatever, and you don't want to listen to it on YouTube. It'll exist there as well. And I also wouldn't mind having some folks on where I could have more of a conversation that was not as, I guess, if there were topics that we wanted to talk about that might trigger some things on this platform, we would be able to have that conversation and then post them to the podcast. And I could just let you guys know, hey, I just had an interview with so-and-so, and you can check it out there or whatever. Can hit you up on the community tab. But anyhow, appreciate it. Right on, Jason, man. Good to see you. Great seeing everybody. Thanks, London, Hilltop, Adrian. Yeah.
Thanks to everybody, and happy Thanksgiving.
Right on. Okay, guys, we're going to get out. Remember, homesteading's not harmful content.
See ya.